All right. Sorry, guys. I am back. Let's try this again. I'll edit the fucking stream to throw in your ad. Gosh, how annoying. So rude. Um, hopefully y'all will see this, but I'm just gonna jump right back into what I was talking about before because it's fun and interesting. All right, so and nope, can't manage that. Share. No. All right, so preparing for the outdoor season. What we're going to want to do is first choose our genetics. So we choose our genetics by our climate and what qualities we are looking for in that strain. So I am a planner. I put a lot of thought and like effort into freaking trying to plan my outdoor garden. So it's been a little stressful for me this year because I don't know where I'm growing outside right now. I am moving in like a month and a half. So I haven't been able to really plan exactly how my garden is going to go. But I've got seeds and I've got strains picked out somewhat. I do have to take I have to grow some stuff obviously I got to grow the OG Kush for the triploid diploid grow along through Blaze, botanical latitude and zone evaluation. And I do have to grow some things for seedsmen. The Cindy 99 fast. Then they have like a few other fast strains from Atlas Seed Company that I'll be growing. So besides that, again, it's the bubble hash. So we're looking at trichome, shape and size, and the feeling of the resin is going to help you also like to determine if it's a good washer. So when you're looking at the trichomes of your cannabis plant, you want to see long stalks. I think it's called sessile capitated or something. And then you want to have a large head that is clearly delineated between the stalk and the head. And they call that a weak neck. So you want to have that neck where it connects stalk to head to be as narrow and thin as possible. So it tapers in. So these are traits that we're looking for good washers. And the feeling, a texture. So if you've ever trimmed flour that's like really gritty and sandy compared to super sticky, like the gritty, sandy trichomes, dump. They are really great washers. So this is two of the things. So climate and bubble hash, and then also like bag appeal, nose, yield is definitely something that we, like to consider. But at this point, it's not really that important for us. But it's a consideration that people might have. So these are all things that you're thinking about before you choose your strain. And then also like, pests. What pests are in your area? What's your climate like? Are you prone to having a lot of mold or, nowadays there's aphids everywhere because of how, commercial cultivation sending clones everywhere. But I have noticed that aphids don't really like the gassy strains as much as the fruity ones. So, like, those are things that you just notice over time about your pests and your region. And then looking at those terpene profiles, the kind of like limonene is going to be antimicrobial. So, lemon strains typically don't have a lot of mold. And then actually preparing for your growing, like, what do you need? So you got to get your clones or your seeds. You've got your genetics chosen, and then preparing your space, right? So what are we looking for when we're growing outdoors. We're looking for our sun exposure. How long of how long do we have that sun exposure? Um, and how is it going to change throughout the season, right? Because the sun changes position. So there's an app. I wish I had, I think it's like Sun Finder, Sun Pathfinder. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. I can't look it up right now. I'll get distracted. But it's an app where you can like hold your phone and point it, and it'll show you the direction of where the sun is going to be at the sky, and you can project out to different times of the year. This is great if you're growing in, like, let's say you're like guerrilla growing on a mountain top or hillside, and there's a lot of trees around, but you have like this one sunny patch, and then you want to see how is the sun going to adjust. Is it going to be below the tree line to where you're in the shade in that like later part of the summer? These are all considerations. I'm not condoning guerrilla growing, but I know I indemnify myself. I did not say like do that. I was just talking about things that people have done. So orientation, east to west. Typically, if you're going to be like growing in rows, or even a raised bed or container, like how you orient your garden according to like that sun, right? South facing, typically east to west. Those are great ways to set up your plants. And then also like things that are going to be really tall if you're growing. I mean, if you know what those strains are going to do, some of those, sativas can get huge. And then some of your indica dominant is like a lot smaller. Shorter, squattier. So maybe you put north of your garden, you got your tall plants, and then south garden, you've got your shorter plants. And that goes for, you should be intercropping, right? You should be planting all different things. So you can benefit from the microbial diversity, the terpene communication. So you can companion plant between your cannabis plants. And there are specific species that are known to increase terpenes. And most anything really increases terpenes, but like any plant. But anecdotally, I took some classes with like the Sim Soil people who are like soil food web consultants from Elaine Ingham's school. And they suggested yarrow, strawberries, I have a whole list, a whole bunch of things, but yarrow and strawberries always stood out to me because they specifically mentioned linalool, and those are floral scents that are already present in that. And some terpenes communicate with other plants by increasing itself. The presence of itself is like, oh, a recognition. So then that plant increases it as well, or different species, like different bacteria or arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi will increase like beta caryophyllene if it's in the presence of a plant that's producing it. So that's just like one of the weird ways that weird, awesome, cool ways plants communicate with each other. So orient all of your species, like, I do corn or tomatoes, things that are going to get really tall also in the north side of my garden. These are just things you can think about, like shade loving, maybe, spinach and radishes and things like that could also go underneath, and you can make different canopies, guilds, as they call it in permaculture. Permaculture, it's like a guild has different stories, so you can companion plant to fill up different canopy spaces. And then that also is going to encourage different like beneficial insects to come in there. Buckwheat does a really good job of kind of like growing up, and it'll grow into the canopy of your cannabis. And while some plants, or like later in the season, this isn't ideal because botrytis can hide in buckwheat stems, but that's a different conversation. And that's a dying or decaying buckwheat. With living buckwheat, as it grows up into the canopy, it attracts parasitic wasps. And then if you have any pests, any aphids, having that companion planting of different stories, different guilds, encourages those species to get into your canopy where the pests are hiding. So you can also do hedgerows like around your garden, which is really good for spider mites because spider mites will travel on the wind. So like, you know, hedgerows. Hedgerows are like fences, living fences that you plant different species around your garden. So maybe you have an actual fence because deer or animals or whatever. You can like plant creeping like hairy vetch or um what am I thinking? Like hollyhocks and sunflowers and things that just grow really tall. Um, the hummingbirds love the hollyhocks and they reseed themselves really well, make a really pretty garden. Sunflowers, you can collect the seeds if the birds don't get them first, but all different birds love sunflowers. And then bringing the birds in also helps with the butterfly or moth population, which then caterpillar population. And then their feet contain protozoa. So it's like the whole web, right? Of that's why I just fucking love growing outdoors. It's just seeing this beautiful display of how nature can interact with each other and noticing these things. So you can notice like how your water filters through your soil. Do you have a slope? How does the wind blow? Where do you have like a big boulder or somewhere naturally on your property that you see plants growing in abundance? Maybe there's the way that our water table works is that there's fissures and cracks below the surface, right? And so we can see accumulation of groundwater in certain areas by signal species like blackberry accumulating in specific areas or like I just lost my train of thought. I need to turn off my notifications. Sorry guys. Anyway, there's lots we can do to think about and prepare for our outdoor garden. Um, water. Let's talk about water. I'm talking about how we can see and notice these, how the water flows in our property, where it accumulates when it rains. But we can also determine our water flow or water holding capacity of our soil if we're planting directly in the ground, which I'm highly recommending you guys plant in the ground if you can. You can dig a hole 12 inches by 12 inches and you can fill it up with water and then you can let it completely drain and then you can fill it up with water again and you can time it. And this is going to give you roughly the estimate of how long it takes 1 gallon of water to percolate through your soil system or, your soil. So this is really good information for doing math with your irrigation systems because typically those soaker hoses and drip tape are going to give you a gallon per minute or a gallon per hour. And you can use the information, the math that you did ahead of time by, just testing your soil. It's important also to remember that most of us are going to manipulate our native soil quite a bit to grow our plants in them. And this is done or achieved through adding a bunch of compost, organic matter, and that kind of stuff. So that is going to change your soil structure, which is then going to influence the way or the water holding capacity of your soil. So these are all things that we're thinking about ahead of time. We want to think about irrigation. We want to think about then are we planting in the ground or are we planting in containers? And to each his own, like you should do what you want to do, right? But like oh, the live chat came back. I didn't even see this. I was like, man, I'm just talking and no one's saying anything. I know, cat lady, that was you. Gosh. So we're gonna think about what is stopping us from planting in the ground, you guys. I mean, obviously, in places where you live in a neighborhood, you don't have like a lot of topsoil, right? They scrape it all away to build our foundations and our houses, and your planting depth, you could like can't even dig a hole in the ground. Like there's no way you could get down 12 inches, right? But you can build your soil up and you can bring in that organic matter, wood chips. Oh my God. I twice this week, you know what I saw that got my freaking heat, my blood flowing? Um, Free wood chips by the dump truckload and poop, manure, dairy cow manure. And I was like, what the fuck? Why don't I have a house yet? Like 2 posts in a week on Facebook Marketplace for that much organic matter. Like, dude, my plants, if I had access to that right now, um, what's up, poop fam? Yes, I love it. What's percolating? We're talking about poop, man. The fucking dairy poop. I wish I could get some of that. You know, you could use Craigslist, dude, why is it in your driveway when you could be putting it everywhere, all over everything? Wood chips are amazing. I can't wait to get a freaking giant pile of wood chips. So, um, deciding between native soil or containers is your choice, and there's a lot of factors that are going to come into play. Your soil depth and the soil organic matter. And other than that, how you treat your soil, like, or whether you choose to grow in the ground or not, like let me tell you, growing in the ground is much easier than growing in containers. It's way cheaper. You're not worried about watering so much. Like literally, you could barely ever. I've never, I have never had a plant um, wilt from underwatering in the ground. Just say that. Um, it's literally their roots stretch, they get huge. That's why you see monster plants planted in the ground, because they have nothing restricting them, so they can just go far and live prosperously. But containers dry out and they're full of potting mix, not soil. So everyone that's saying like living soil, if you took my class, a lot of you guys in here took my living soil master class. Wow, it's been 2 years, almost 2 years since I did that. And I promote living soil or native soil. Native soil is real soil. Potting mix is not soil. Potting mix is soilless media that is just being called living soil because we're trying to mimic the way nature solubilizes minerals by adding in bacteria and fungus. Sorry, I have to blow a nose. This has been 2024 has been like the most sick year for me. It's crazy. Okay. Native soil is abundant. It's filled with all of these minerals. It's just got all of the bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes. It has everything already there in nature, perfectly balanced and orchestrated. Well, not perfectly balanced, because we've been fucking it up for years. And yay, cat lady, huge fan of daikon radish to help with your clay-rich soil. That's amazing. I just made a video this morning. I'll post it on Sunday, hopefully, if I can get my freaking camera to upload the videos. Freaking GoPro, man. I'm just technologically impatient. I'm an impatient person. So I did a video this morning on talking about different companion plants versus cover crops, right? Because cover crops are different than companion planting. So I guess you're just going to have to watch the video on Sunday that hopefully it goes up. But this is also part of your garden planning. Determining what your native soil type is like and what kinds of plants you can cover crop to improve its tilth or its ability to, produce healthy plants. And yay, yes, I had giant radishes in the walkway. It's amazing. I love the daikon radish. And I found out that it's a Japanese radish, and daikon is Japanese. Is Japanese. Oh god, I'm spitting on myself. For big radish. So when you say daikon radish, it's actually you're saying big radish. So my husband taught me that one actually. Um, yeah. There's all different kinds of companion plants that you can choose to plant for whatever reason, whether it's attracting a beneficial insect, it is increasing soil organic matter, it is breaking up compaction. Like use the species that do those things, learn about them, and incorporate them into your garden. Um, I did not know au jus meant to anything different than au jus. I don't even know what au jus means actually. Now I'm gonna have to look that up too. Um, so I've got buckwheat, sweet alyssum, daikon as like 3 that are always in my companion planting mix. Well, daikon because I've predominantly been in even if you're not in clay, daikon is really amazing because um it when you just leave it there to decompose, it just adds a shitload of organic matter, and we should be increasing our soil organic matter. That is what I believe in living soil or regenerative, like that's what we should be doing, right? It's not even living soil, like I said, it's like a trendy marketing word. And we want to be regenerating our soil, our real soil, our native soil, not something that is produced and commoditized and shipped across the country. Yes, I know that not everyone can grow in native soil, but I am here to try to get you to just do it a little bit and um just try it out. So think about it. Plan. Maybe you're just gonna, this year grow in your containers or your raised beds. Or if you are growing in raised beds, which is totally fine, um, you can use the native soil or just don't, it's open on the bottom and you can just fill it up. I do love hugelkultur. Hugelkultur beds are my jam. That's what I grew in this last year. I had a 4x8 bed that I built with 2x4s open to the hard packed ground. But I did branches, logs, and then root balls and stems and stalks and all kinds of things. Yeah, anything that hugelkultur is amazing because it acts as all of that woody material acts as a sponge where it absorbs the water and then it slowly releases it. And you could probably get away with like almost dry farming in certain areas. Yay, Dallas. I'm so happy that this is your first time on a live stream and you've been watching me since Mr. Grote. I said Dr. Grote. I'm also not, I'm sorry guys. I'm a little high and a little sick, so and I'm always a little crazy. But preparing for our garden by analyzing our soil type and then planning where we're going to put our plants, thinking about irrigation. We've got our strains picked out. These are all things. I don't even know if I'm going off of fully like the article. It might definitely not. I'm crazy. I go off on tangents. So when this article comes out on Seedsman, it's going to be much different, obviously, than what I'm just spouting off here. But yes. So I'm going to just really quickly glance over. What am I missing? Oh, hardening off. Yeah, I didn't talk about that at all yet. So soil or potting mix, we're talking about that, right? You guys know the difference. Potting mix is inert. It's not inert necessarily, but it's a soilless media. Soil is real soil. It has 45 to 50% minerals in it, depending on where you're at. And most people have really low soil organic matter. So what we want to do is just add more soil organic matter, get it growing. And if you can incorporate animal, like obviously not hardly anybody has like farm animals, but if you can have a couple chickens, like their bedding makes really good soil, like adding it and composting. Everyone can freaking compost, whether it's a worm bin or a little pile in your backyard or a Johnson Soup bioreactor, which I can't wait to make. Like we want more organic matter in our soil. So any way you can. Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, free wood chips, free poop, as much free things as possible that people just want to get rid of. Like that's how we, close loop it and just save money, save the environment, and grow fucking the dopest dope you ever smoked. Like full of terpenes. And you're thinking ahead about your pests, your climate. You're going to get ahead of that. You're planning for the future. Preventative sprays are really great throughout vegetative. I do sulfur. I'm just a sulfur sprayer through veg. So wettable sulfur does a great job of preventing any kind of mold or pests, really. It smells disgusting, right? Like, so don't spray it at all during flower. But it's a super cheap elemental sulfur, safe, just a mineral, and you can spray it throughout veg and pretty much prevent a shitload of pests and mold. Mold is a pest, but insects, whatever. And then once you're in flower, spraying continuously, like once a week or once every other week, with during the transition, like as soon as you start seeing pistils, I would switch to like Dr. Bronner's horticultural oil, water, maybe a little bit of peppermint. Wash it off with the Dr. Bronner's first, water and Dr. Bronner's, and then add in the oil, because oil and sulfur are phytotoxic. So you want to like make sure you don't have any more sulfur residue on there. And then once you're past the transition and you're getting actual buds growing, then I would switch to bio controls like Bavaria bassiana, Isaria famosa rosea, Bacillus blend, and a trichoderma blend. And you can mix bio controls together, and they're completely safe to spray through flower to the end. And then Bacillus thuringiensis, specifically at certain times for caterpillars, like you should get to know your like mating season or whatever of your insects, your butterflies, your moths, know when the caterpillars are coming, know when, what was it that I was just talking with Jackalope, Kimmy from Jackalope Farm. She was talking about like how she knows when a certain like leafhopper is coming and then another bug is coming to eat it, and so she doesn't have to worry about spraying because it's not going to damage her buds. Maybe it's eating a little bit of leaf, but you also have to get out of that indoor mindset of no pests, no problems, because 10% of your garden should be going back to jaw, Mother Earth. Like, it doesn't matter. She's giving to you, you are giving to her. And that's the permaculture foundation, right? 10% of whatever we have, let's give it back. Whether that's maybe we pull off a perfectly great harvest, everything went smooth and didn't lose anything to pests or mold, but you should still give 10%. Give 10% to a veteran or whoever. Like, the more you give, the more you get. So plan ahead and you're gonna get more. Cicadas, yeah, maybe, but I don't think cicadas eat. Yeah, like I thought it was cicadas, and then I was like, I don't know if cicadas are like omnivorous, or I don't know. I just know that they like hatch every 17 years. Pretty fucking weird. Okay, so you've thought about all these things. You thought about your containers, your water flow, your irrigation, which, by the way, if you're doing outdoor, like blue mats are cool. I like how the idea of them and the added benefit of like optimizing your watering, and inside it's great. I have a hard time keeping my reservoir filled, so I don't ever really use my blue mats. And outdoors, I just feel like it's not really necessary, because if you're not in a container, especially in the ground, it's like, drip tape's pretty cheap, and you just roll it out and then roll it back up for the winter and you're good to go. And just remember, if you go between, I usually do drip tape or soaker hose, depending on if I'm in rows. If I'm in a row, drip tape, you can just roll it all the way out as long as you want. So grow hose is good for individual plants. Like I said, maybe you're guerrilla growing on the side of a hill if you have water source like that. But I have heard people like guerrilla growing in next to streams or whatever, and then the plant's never really gonna run out of water because its roots are gonna find water. It's close to water. If you're by a stream, water is running down, percolating to that stream. So anyway, again, I'm not condoning guerrilla growing, but if you have to. And fertilizer, let's talk about that. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna feed your plants, right? Because while all of the minerals that your plant needs are typically found within the soil substrate, they're not like in soluble form for a plant. They have to be small enough, right? They have to be broken down and then enzymatically digested. And we need to do that through, the soil food web, organic matter. But giving your plants some fertilizer, like a consistent source where they can access that is great, especially while you're building soil. So, some of the fertilizers that I use, like neem meal, I've talked about this before in other videos. Neem meal is great, long lasting nitrogen. It's not fully soluble. It's like 2 to 4%, I believe, is available. And then the rest has to be broken down. And I think it might be a 642 or something like that. It has insect growth regulation properties. It smells like Indian food. It's really great. Neem meal is an excellent choice. But it's also shipped from India. So, like, you know, what's your carbon footprint? These are the things like I battle with in my head. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be using it, but I love how it works. And yeah, but alfalfa meal is another choice, or any kind of obviously compost, free compost, rock phosphate. That's what I go for my phosphorus source. I'm not a guano person. Used to be, works great, but not super sustainable. So these are things when you're purchasing your fertilizer that you want to think about. You want to think, what is important to you? What is easy to use? And always go dry amendments, man. Like, fuck that bottled bullshit. You don't need to pay for water and marketing and some company to just try and make more money off of you for being a weed grower. Just go to the freaking garden store and get down to earth, dry amendments, and you're gravy. Like, BioLive is the bee's knees. And you have a fungus in forgotten canna clippings questions. Yes, talk to me. Spit it out. Spit it out, OG Lit Blazer 556, and I will try to help with your question. Speaking of, let's take this break to remind everyone that the Citizen Science Project Blaze Botanical Latitude and Zone Evaluation is now open to the public. Well, you have to sign up for my Patreon, but you can do that now. It's been open for about a week. You will receive free OG Kush triploid seeds and diploid from the Humboldt Seed Company in exchange for collecting data from growing these seeds outdoor. There's going to be prizes. We have sponsors that will give away, different amendments and inoculants and seeds. So sign up, be a part of the community. Let's gather some data that's going to help us create outdoor growing zones so we can choose the best strains for our climate. I don't know. I'm not seeing the question from OG Lit Blazer about the fungus in the forgotten canna clipping, but I don't know what kind of fungus it is. If it's, botrytis, or if it's, some kind of just moldy, like a decomposer. Okay, so it looks like standard long white wispy hairs, but there are tiny tan orbs heads on some of the older growth. Oh, that's okay. Sorry. My grandma calls that a hunt and pecker when you type slow. I learned that from her a few years ago, and it just for some reason made me laugh a lot. Hunt and pecking. Anyway, the I would be nervous if there are heads on it, a lot of the times, is it white or is it gray? Grayish. Because if it's white, the white wispy is fine. But botrytis is everywhere, and botrytis typically looks like brown, gray, and it has those heads on it a lot of the time. It doesn't always have to. But typically, botrytis is in all places, so I don't worry about it if I've grown in a bed that has botrytis on the buckwheat let's I was talking about. So botrytis really likes humid and warmish environment, or a little bit cooler, I guess, like I think 60 degrees, and I think 60 to 70 was like the prime spot for botrytis, which is like also the prime, what people are like drying at. So crazy. Anyway, trichoderma does a really good job of outcompeting botrytis and like sulfur, like I said. So you could literally just spray your leaf pile with sulfur. It's not going to be bad at all for your soil. Soil has sulfur in it. It will eventually lower the pH of your soil slightly, but it takes a long time for elemental sulfur, to lower the pH of your soil. So I would spray the shit out of it with sulfur and yeah, compost them. Or if you were like, what are you doing? Where are they? Are they in a bed? Are they decomposing in a pile somewhere? Because depending on like your situation, where you're at, the resources you have, then that would adjust my recommendation. If you don't want to move them, spray them with sulfur. There you go. If you don't mind moving them, if they're not like a ton of them, then compost them. Get a bunch of other bacteria, microorganisms. Like I said, that trichoderma is in all over. Like, so is botrytis outside. Like, those are the things we just need to learn the environment and what's going to. Oh, you forgot them. They're already in 5-gallon buckets. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Just compost them. Just throw them outside and they'll be fine. There's literally botrytis everywhere. It's in your freaking refrigerator. Think about the strawberries that decompose in hi Raider. Yep, you're good to go. Botrytis ain't no thing. You got it, man. And botrytis it's just doing its job. It's just a decomposer. Oh, lactobacillus will eat it up. Yeah, any bacillus or anything. Composting, that's like exactly the easiest way to do it. Is just compost it. Literally just throw it in a pile, throw some dry stuff on it, maybe some poop if you got some, swish it around, spray it off. And the botrytis is going to help it just break down even faster. And I don't know if I would make a tea from it. I don't know about that. If it's moldy, I would definitely compost it. I don't know about making a tea from botrytis leaves and like just compost it. Okay, so the rest of the article, what else did I need to talk about or want to talk about? Let's see here. Oh yeah, fertilizer. So I typically like to go for like byproduct fertilizers if I'm buying anything. Obviously free things, growing your own like products for composting, whether that's like animals and poop and worms, or pumpkins and squash because they grow like super easy and a ton of them and can be added to your compost. Getting hay and straw and whatever free, like I know I saw somebody posting that they got like truckloads of free oats. Like, what an amazing way to freaking compost. let's see here. Hello, just considering what methods may be good for city folks. What do you mean methods for city folks? Like okay, you want me to give you the scenario. I live in a city right now. I live in a regular ass neighborhood. I can't plant in the ground, so I built a raised bed, 4x8, and two 4x8 beds, and everything was less than $100 for the chicken wire on the bottom, the screws, the 2x4s, and I used scraps of, you know, a tree fell, broke, and I used that, cut that up, and threw it in for the hugelkultur mound. I bought a giant 50-pound bag of rice hulls, bulk. I have a truck, so did a bulk soil that I just got dumped into the back and then shoveled that. I actually could fit my truck into the backyard, which was crazy. It's a tiny truck though, so mini Mazda 1986 is my husband's, but I've taken it over. Yes, worm bin would be excellent for composting. Or if you can't build a raised bed or you don't own, you don't want to. I always end up wasting a bunch of money. Well, not it's not wasting, but like investing a bunch of money in houses that I don't own because I in the garden space, like I just can't not do it that way, but whatever. Um, yeah, composting doesn't use that much space, like 3 feet by 3 feet. So if you have a little backyard, you could use a tumbler, but they don't really work that great. Literally, if you could just have a 3 foot by 3 foot space, that's all you need for composting. And compost like breaks down super quick. So um you you know it well it breaks down really quick, but what I'm trying to say is it breaks down into like nothing. Like you can have this 3 foot tall pile, 3 foot wide pile, and then like after you're done turning it, watering it, by a month, 2 months, depending on the temperature, it will be like nothing, like a little tiny little pile of black gold. So, um, Robert, you're using an extra 3x15 bed in your regular garden, fenced in but not locked with whatever the requirements are. So dumb that they have requirements like that. Um, yes, use any kind of tree scraps, anything that just fills up your beds and adds that, the what am I thinking? I cannot think right now. I'm sorry, guys. The moisture holding capacity increases that water holding capacity, by being that sponge. Um, so if I didn't even have a yard though, and I had just a patio to work with, I would try to do 100-gallon living soil, grassroots living soil fabric pot, and I would do um, a Cornell mix, third of peat moss / cocoa coir, aeration, pumice, rice hulls, and compost, really good quality. And I would do my one freaking plant or whatever. I know, Grapinator, that's what I said. It's so crazy that they make you lock your plants up. It's like, what the hell? I mean, that was like the biggest complaint is people were saying, oh, like kids are gonna come steal it or something. This is so dumb. The requirements are so stupid. But if you didn't have a yard and you didn't have a place to plant in the ground or build a raised bed, do one of those fabric pots. You might do a blue mat if you can't want, or just hand water, use a moisture meter or your finger. That's a great moisture meter. And then I would try to grow. I would put my worm bin right next to it, or I'd throw fucking worms inside. Um, and then I would plant a companion plants. I would do buckwheat. I would do sweet alyssum. I would do maybe a vetch or a creeping thyme or something that I was going to eat. Some radishes. Those grow really quickly. Um, I would make that one little 100-gallon pot. Maybe you can't fit a 100-gallon pot on your patio. I don't know. You could go down to a 50-gallon and you can do the same thing and you just keep your plants, they'll just be smaller. So, you just have to, water a lot more, which sucks, and you're not going to have as big of a plant, but that's okay because you just being outside gardening, you're going to be happier. Somebody sent me something, I think it was Midnight Samurai, that was like, uh, gardeners live longer than anyone else because it keeps you active and outdoors. Like, most people who garden, who love garden late into their life because, it's low impact, but it's active and it keeps you happy and fulfilled. So if you garden today, you garden tomorrow, you're going to live longer than all these other fools out here who aren't gardening. And yes, I call them fools. If you're not gardening, I feel like you're a fool because it's such a satisfying thing to do. And hopefully you expand from cannabis to planting other things. So my dream is to I've only lived on farms for commercial cannabis cultivation, and since I am no longer a commercial cultivator, I my dream is to just be able to farm like enough for my family to live off of, like, and try to have, a certain amount of food that we're actually producing enough of for, like, actual subsistence, and not just like, oh, gardening season, like, oh, I've got a shitload of tomatoes and squash, like planning out and growing things that store. Butternut squash is one that I love, but again, that's a squash. Squash is just so prolific, but I like how long it lasts in stores. So I'm hoping, in the next couple months, I'll be on my own property and I can, I'm not a commercial cultivator anymore. I can just grow a bunch of other things too. Um, That's hilarious. The blue zone. I haven't even read that. Yes, Robert, thank you. Gardening is life. Are you a fan of perlite? No, I'm not a fan of perlite. Rice hulls and pumice. Perlite comes to the top and it just blows away, and it's not like, it's just not it. That's not where I'm at. I'm not a perlite person. Pumice and rice hulls. And outside, really, I don't add additional like pumice typically. The soil blend that I would like, the compost blend that I would get that was inoculated with, was like the landscape companies, their compost, they would add some pumice into it. And so a little bit of pumice, like that's lava rock, but not really adding too much. I would rather my soil just be built up. With rice hulls and enough organic matter that it's like, you know, doesn't need that aeration so much. Biochar is a great option to throw in there to also absorb nutrients and water and help with that water holding capacity. So you can get like granular biochar, which is great, instead of like there's a fine powder. So and yeah, the rice hulls, you have access. Okay, cool. Yeah, I love rice hulls. I buy it by, like I said, the 50-pound bag. And that's another thing when you're thinking about what you need to buy, like think about what goes bad, how much you're going to use. And then if you have the space, buy it in bulk to save money. Like 50-pound bags are so much cheaper than just those little, small things. So go in on it with your friends, do some um joint gardening purchases, go in on a big old bag of kelp. Freaking, I know that there's like pushback about kelp having heavy metals, but I buy specific type of kelp, which is maxi crop, and it's from the Atlantic Ocean, and it is tested as some of the lowest heavy metal containing kelp there is. And I buy the water soluble, so I can make a tea, I can make a foliar spray. I love kelp. I think that it's a shame we can't really use. I stay away from anything off of a California coast kelp, because Fukushima motherfuckers, like, I ain't trying to buy no radioactive kelp. And I know the oceans. Somebody was like, "Oh, the oceans are connected." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know that, but there's a lot more pollution and nastiness that's just right there with the radiation going. Radiation has like a half-life, so the further it spreads and the longer it's there, I don't think dilution is the solution to pollution. So I'd rather be somewhere farther away where it's a lot more diluted." Um, and so, yeah, and the testing backs up that it is cleaner product. So that's the maxi crop. Um, yeah, exactly. It's so sad. Pacific Ocean is so, and I grew up in SoCal going to the beach. And then I remember the first time I went to like the Atlantic, well, the Caribbean, I guess. I was like, wow, this is so beautiful and like clear. I wonder, did the Pacific ever used to look like this? Or is just like, I don't know, just gross. But yeah, Fukushima's still not fixed, y'all. Um, it's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. We just got radioactive waste still spilling out there. Um, but yeah, okay. What else do I need to talk about? What else do I need to cover in this article, this planning? We talked about companion plants, irrigation, your pest management plan. Yeah, that's pretty much everything I talked about in this article. Um, wow, there are studies that say the Pacific looked like the Caribbean does now in 1920. It's gotten that bad since. Wow, that's so crazy. Man, the Caribbean's so pretty. I can't wait to go back. I haven't been since like, I don't know, 2014, 2015, 2016. I don't know, something like that. I went to Puerto Rico. It was really pretty, but it's really sad. There's so much dead coral just washing up on the oceans. All right. So guys, let's review really quick how we can have the best outdoor growing season. Um, oh wow. The Chesapeake Bay used to be crystal clear too. Wow, it's so crazy how we've destroyed and what we've done. I wish, well, I know, I think maybe if past lives, like if we've lived multiple lives, I feel like um I really resonate with like the pioneers. I feel like I was like one of those people in my last life, if that, if I'm sound a little crazy, but I like to imagine, just have a imagination. But I just wish I could have seen that and like what America was like, 200 years ago, what it was like to see millions of bison and antelope running across the Great Plains and grizzlies and buffalo wolves. And like, I mean, I used to live in a place called Big Bear, and it's named Big Bear after um the grizzlies, the California grizzly, which is completely extinct now. And um they killed, I think, 11 bears on their way up. Grizzlies, they just walked all over California. I mean, that's why it's the California state flag. There's so many, and it was the biggest freaking bear, bigger than, way more than the polar bear does. Just crazy. Yes, OG. I wish I could, yeah, exactly. Lewis and Clark times. I think there's 26 members of the Corps of Exploration, and two of them were my great uncles. They were Joseph and Robert Fields, I believe. They were brothers that they were on the Corps of Exploration. And my grandma's like, I'm Mormon, and for some reason Mormons are really like obsessed with genealogy because they baptized the dead people in their family. So like you go back and you like find out who your whole your pedigree, like the chart from Seed Finder, and then you go and to the temple and you get baptized for your dead relatives, to make sure that they go to heaven too. Um, so that was a weird side thing, but yeah, I learned about the all of my ancestors because of that, and I actually had to do some baptism by proxy. It was very very strange, but Oh, you camped there so many times growing up? Yeah, I grew up in the foothills of Big Bear, and that was the first place I moved out. And it is a beautiful place. It's definitely disgusting. That water is so gross. And so when we're thinking about our waterways, this is a great time to consider our fertilizers and our fertilizer use. So, um, like nitrogen and phosphates can wash out into our waters, and they can cause eutrophication, which is going to cause algal blooms, which is going to eat up the oxygen, can cause massive die-offs. That's what we see in the Gulf of Mexico every year because of the fertilizers that conventional farmers are using. So be conscious in our choices. That's why we're not using like water soluble nitrates, using a long lasting form of nitrogen like a neem or alfalfa, something that's going to break down slowly, not excessively applying it, and just being aware of your, like I said in the beginning, the how water flows on your property. So that's an important thing to note. Like, um, what are you what are you doing to your ecosystem? Let's start thinking about our biosphere and not our like how are we incorporating throughout all of these things our watersheds, our biogeochemical cycles, which is like the cycles that nitrogen, carbon, phosphorus all go through naturally, and how are we influencing that in our little zones. And then just like educating the people around us too. Like I'm always telling my grandparents, like, why are you spraying the glyphosate? Like, why are you spraying freaking or Miracle Grow or what, or using Miracle Grow or doing all these things when like we know better now? Like it's not the freaking 70s. You don't, or 50s. They spray DDT all over kids. And there's ads from the 50s. It's like DDT is good for me. We know better. Like let's do better, and let's encourage each other and not come from a place of like, oh, you need to do this, you're killing the earth, but like more like a loving kindness. If we all come from that space of loving kindness, we want you to do better, I want to do better, we want to do better for our future, and your weed's going to be better, and then you're going to be happier, and then you can smoke more weed and be even happier. Let me read the comments. Yes, I would have loved to see in Montana and stumbled upon your ranch and claimed the state or when your family stumbled upon it. Yes. Isn't that crazy that back in the day you could just go out and be like, "This is my land. I claim it," and file a claim with the federal government, and that's your homestead. And um amazing that you're seeing how the impact of the river upriver not using organic products or being mindful of the product. That is, yeah, it's very true. I was talking about this whole like we think of things in like lines, like okay, like I'm in this state or I'm in that, and you know, we have these rules or regulations, but you think if you start thinking of things in ecosystems and like biospheres and watersheds, really watershed, I really like that idea, like of considering what watershed do I live in, because that watershed, water is life, and it's going to influence the way species grow, where animals migrate, how nutrients are flowing or cycling through your ecosystem. um it's just a great way to garden, to be mindful and present, and to choose things that have that positive impact on those around you, but then you're going to benefit off of it because every year you garden like this, your soil gets better and the less you have to put into it. And eventually you don't even have to put any minerals, like, you can just keep putting on compost, and um you should have enough. You should be able to eventually one day, if you have, enough land, um to really like self-sustain it and not have to buy a ton of things. And then if you're in the city, it's okay. Like you can grow on your patio, but still you're in a watershed and your water's going somewhere and it's going to be treated. And how is it going to be treated? What's it going to do while it's on its way there? What are you spraying? Is anything drifting? Like, are you releasing invasive predatory insects to come? I just shared something on Instagram because there's like invasive praying mantis that are sold that are not the native species. Like, you should be mindful of all of these things, right? So all right, I need to go cook dinner for my family. Thank you guys for tuning in. The article will drop on uh I don't know when, honestly, on seedsman.com. It's in the description, the link to Seedsman. You go through, they have great blogs. I love writing for them. And yeah, check out Blaze. There's a lot of Blaze participants in the chats. I'm super stoked, you guys. I sent out a newsletter on Wednesday, which, wow, it was only yesterday. But we should be getting codes to send out seeds to participants, hopefully in the next couple of days. And new podcast episode drops on Saturday. So stay tuned, guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And you guys are all so welcome. I look forward to talking to you again soon.